Genshin Impact, Breath of the Waifu, medieval D&D anime, the game. Whatever you call it, this MiHoYo open-world semi-MMO has taken the gaming and anime markets out of nowhere, with its gacha trope and mounds of appreciation throughout the community. As many influential actors in the anime scene have conglomerated into the spice of free-to-play. It's not too bad on mobile either, but judging from my first impressions, and the fact that animo is a word, is the hype justified? What has people investing life savings into a single banner? That is to be covered today, when we review Genshin Impact. The opening throws you straight into the vibe, anime thighs and all, and lets you select a twin to play as, and a twin to get captured. Both just change the gender of the plot, and as evident as a bit later, the game wants you to pick the female due to some mixed up voice lines. That's why you should pick male. After Britannia is given a backstory, we see him describing the story to our local emergency food, Paimon. In the starting portions, I honestly dislike Paimon. The one thing I dislike is the amount of mystery it leaves for what Paimon is, and you never truly know. She's an alright character, but you really do have to get used to her. After you two set off onto your adventure, a Breath of the Wild style cutscene introduces Mondstadt, the first of the two regions you play in. It's a cool reveal, and honestly makes me happy to see the medieval style the game takes on. Get used to hearing
Animal.
I still don't know what an animo is.
Can someone save us? No. You find a teardrop, a dragon, and a ghost. Ember, a knight of Favonius, hunts you two down after that interaction, but she's useless in actual gameplay after you get more characters, but you'll need her for some bow puzzles, and other than that, she's meh. She's a cool character to be introduced story-wise and prompts emergency food.
Hey, that's even worse than being a mascot.
So, development-wise, she's an alright character. After taking you to a hilly troll, aka Goatman camp, you all report to the town of Mondstadt, where the glider is introduced, and then you're randomly thrown into a fight with a dragon that you saw earlier. Huh? And a mysterious voice? Specifically, the introduction I don't like. It throws too much lingo and magic at you with no explanation whatsoever. It's really strange. After taking down Storm Terror for the first time, you get introduced to Kaya, one of my favorite characters, and thereafter the Knights of Favonius, which adds two more characters, Lisa and Jean. Jean is actually a good character, and Lisa is just sexual innuendo the character, be it if you're male or if you're female. Aside from that, you agree to help them, and now report to the first shrine, I mean the first domain. They are very, very similar to shrines from Breath of the Wild, and they have puzzles and fighting alike. The intro one isn't that bad to be honest, but they get better. Pretty basic, and after doing a few of the introductory levels, you get Kaya and Lisa on your team. Kaya is a cool cryo user, which is one of the many elemental types, and though he's not the best, he's my favorite to use gameplay-wise. Lisa is a strange electric user that you'll end up training for Beidou or Razor after fighting through a few gacha-type wishes. This gives you a full party of 4 and allows the elemental mechanic to be exemplified. Proceeding into the story gets you again to the Knights of Favonius, gains you the rank of Honorary Knight, and even though you do most of the work it seems, it lets you on your way. I'm gonna be dead honest, I dislike this introduction. It's not that it's empty, it's that it's too full that walking up a stair will really make it spill over just a tad. It throws so much lingo and random anime tropes in the beginning, and it really confused me from the get-go that I almost didn't want to continue. It also almost never answers the question of what exactly took away Aether or Lumine, the other twin. That part's honestly left out from most of the whole story too. I still didn't know what an animo was until about 2 missions into the mainline quest, which I'll briefly cover at the end. And for anyone wondering, it's the elemental slang for wind. I mean, I should have guessed that. I don't like the introduction, but the gameplay during it was pretty alright. so I decided let's keep going. Considering I've just covered some elements, let's talk gameplay. Contrary to how the intro introduces the story, the gameplay and fight mechanics are really what pulled me into this game. It stresses the idea of bouncing between party members to exploit damage and weak points to take down a fire or ice regensive, or a boss. Let's introduce the elements, shall we? Anemo is your first, being wind. This is the most basic and doesn't do much. That is, at first. After getting a character like Sucrose, you begin to combo attacks from multiple characters to find the reaction of Anemo along with Cryo, Electro, and Pyro, all tremendously amplified. Anemo is useful for combos, and Venti is just proof of how much attack a wind person can do. Next is Pyro, easily one of the most adaptable in the game, especially since all the ads throw Zhongling in your face.
My name is Xiangling. I'm a chef from Liyue.
My main Pyro user is Klee, and she has fire bombs that she throws out, setting the ground around her on fire. Also, the only other 5-star I have. Altogether, fire users like Bennett and Diluc, but not Amber, rack up a lot of damage and can easily provide AoE if used correctly. Honestly, Pyro is useful, but in my setup is usually just used as a backup. Cryo or Ice is the next one, and is my personal favorite, as I have a guilty pleasure of playing Kea a bit too much. Cryo, in mix with Hydro, utilizes the ability to freeze people or set a chill effect, symbolized by the snowflake above an enemy's head. This can be mixed with a multitude of things, and together tremendously helps in keeping a good pace between enemies and attacks. While you should use Chongyun, I recommend Kea, cause he's fun. He's decent if you super level him, I guess. I digress. Make sure to keep a Cryo on your team, cause Cryo is just fun to use. Electro is the next to be introduced, and with the right characters, can wreak havoc. Electro has a nice effect with everything, making supercharges on attacks when mixed with Pyro, Cryo, Hydro, Anemo, and basically anything. Altogether, this is almost required on a main team, as a lot of puzzles require Electro as well. The combos are crazy nice, the characters have useful abilities, most of the time, and is home to Beidou, one of the only characters with an absorb ability, which is very helpful to roll. Also home to Fischl, another creative and all-around useful character, even though I haven't rolled her yet. Game, please just let me roll her. Now quickly I'll cover Geo, as Noelle is the only one that's really notable. You get her free from a beginner's wish, and her element is kinda meh. It's solo and doesn't really have any use in combos. It doesn't have much to apply to it either. Though you would think it would create heavy damage, comboing anything else can make more. Not the best element, and honestly, I would just say just don't use it. Contrary to low use, by far the most useful and comboing amazing element is Hydro, home to the best Genshin character Barbara. Okay, probably not the best character, but my favorite to play with at the moment. Hydro is the most versatile and useful of elements, and by mixing it with my guilty pleasure, freezes enemies in place, so you can breeze easy. It can also mix Pyro and Electro to vaporize or charge respectively, and even mix in with some Anemo. These characters of Hydro, being mainly Mona and Barbara, end up being some of the best on the team, as Barbara is one of the only designated healer characters with one of the best R2 abilities in the game. I mean, every elemental attack heals. Like, come on, it's so useful. If you really want, Barbara can also be adapted into a DPS, which is what I'm trying to do, and deals mounds of damage with the correct combos, racking in 10Ks of damage. I think my case is closed of why Hydro is best. Now, quick mention, the only unplayable element is Dendro, and you face a few slimes with it, and honestly, it's okay. Pyro combos it easily, and mostly everything else doesn't really struggle with it. I guess it's nice to mention, but I want to see what they would do to adapt a Dendro character. Now that we've laid out all the elements, let's cover abilities.
With abilities, I should probably talk about class as well, as usually they adapt pretty smoothly together. The first class is Basic Swordsman, being your Traveler or Kaya. These characters tend to have shorter range abilities and spurs of damage. Honestly, it's a pretty decent class, and altogether is exactly what a Basic Swordsman type, which is good. I love Kaya and his class because of this gameplay, but in total, it's really just a Basic Swordsman with nice charge attacks, doing slightly more damage. In total, very average class. I'd also consider a Spear user a subclass, which in this subclass is Zhongling. This subclass has altering abilities aiming to be more creative and focuses on flurries rather than one straight hit does a kill. Altogether, these are basically your very basic classes. The next is Heavy, being your Beidou. This class tends to focus a lot more on damage while sacrificing speed and having more strategical abilities. This class is for that one phase that the boss does almost nothing and you need to lay into them, and they can mix speed if the character so desires it. While usually just a basic slash, long-lasting abilities come more from here too, as well as absorption. Ultimates here are also pretty decent. A good one to have on your main team, and a great class altogether. Third class is Bows, focusing on range, with a lot more of different ultimates. I don't have a bow on my team at the moment, but one good bowman is Venti. This class is uber useful in puzzles and really has bouncing abilities here. It's a mix between range, AoE, and straight bombs. This class, as well as the next, adapt abilities to creatively, farther ranges, and can be some of the most useful in the team if used correctly. Bowman altogether I'd also say is decently average in what you'd expect, but the abilities really make this class a good member on your team. There's a good few notable ones, but altogether, it's just a ranged team. The last one, and hopefully the most creative, I'm covering is Mage, which has a good few subclasses. First is Damage in the subclass, being your Klee. These type of mages utilize decent range, but also adapt straight damage in a very elemental style way. Basic attacks will do elemental damage and almost always, and inflict status effects similar to the other subclasses. This may introduce some pretty good combos. Next is Sucrose and AoE, focusing more on certain area of effect. These types are needing to be combined with other elements in order to get the most efficiency out of them and really make a good person on the team. Last one of my favorite is the Healer. Healer, being Barbara and Jean, focus close on keeping space with abilities that can tend universally to maximize regen. The one thing about all these subclasses though is that depending on the correct set of artifacts, you can adapt either one of them to change their subclass. All around, you just need a mage in your party at all times. As mentioned earlier, the combat system also implements weapons, artifacts, and constellations, and so many other micromanagement options that rely on RNG and maybe microtransactions when the time comes, but altogether any other piece just increases slight stats, which depending on the build can be useful. Each character has a set of stats that are really important to them, and depending on which one you increase can really change their subclass. Creative thinking can arrive from these sorts of builds, such as a DPS Barbara, and creates a personal experience, even though it especially gets annoying after the game locks you at a certain point. I talk a lot about something being meaningful. And since this game is free, it either requires a lot of time or your fresh cash from your last paycheck. Yet, Genshin wants to capture your time more than it does your money. Even with microtransactions, the game forces you to explore its world without a point to it. The world itself is full of things to explore, and to be honest, sometimes feels so full that there is almost no break. While people complain about an emptiness to the world in Breath of the Wild, Genshin suffers from the exact opposite. Breath of the Wild has a connection to the world around you, having the player create their own puzzle and how to scale a mountain. Genshin, on the other hand, throws mounds of hilly troll camps and random slimes at you in mini puzzles, and it just feels like it's all adding on. It's great that there's so much content, yet I find myself dashing past a lot of this to get to a stature of the 7 just for heals. The Animonculus and Geomonculus feel like separate puzzles, yet feel like a forced way to get the feeling Breath of the Wild had. I mean, I'm not completely against it, but while I felt calm and collected enough to continue in Breath of the Wild, Genshin made me feel in action at all times, and on my toes. Sometimes to a T that the cutscenes felt like I had to get back into battle. I'm not against this feeling, but judging from the amazing melodic soundtrack, I doubt that's a feeling that they were trying to go for. Yet Breath of the Wild almost allows you to adapt how you want to and create your own story, while Genshin's story is locked into a mission system, and though it works well, is locked behind evil adventure ranks. Adventure ranks provide a point in the game that locks you from continuing a quest, as most free-to-plays would, which to be honest is annoying. Similar to levels in Destiny, they advance due to the other side quests or interactions. Daily missions and side jobs are prominent through the world, which makes the game feel inhabited. I mean, this opportunity is great, but almost all interactions push you nowhere close to the next rank you need. This makes the story, even though it's quite quick and simple, feel 10 times more drawn out than it actually is. Now, I get it, this game is free, so you need incentive to buy in-game items. At this point of the game, I believe you would have thrived better by making this a paid title, having the long drawn-out MMO-esque story make it feel disconnected to the world. I digress. The side quests feel more like a side story in the D&D campaign, or so at least it fits with these theme of stories. Talking about stories, Stormterror is still angered and ready to run rampant, and we're about to jump into the spoiler territory, or at least slightly. I'm going to be covering the whole story here, but almost in an abridged version to where I won't mess up the gameplay. Now with that addressed, let's cover his arc, shall we? Contrary to the foreshadowing with no substance of the introduction, the main development of the story answers many if not all questions that the introduction leaves you with. After passing a certain adventure rank, you get introduced to the one and only Venti, the bard who was seen in the introduction. After speaking to him, you figure out that he can speak to Stormterror and wishes to gain Mondstadt's holy lyre to do so. So you report to the church and try and steal it to find a member of the evil Fatui take it from you before you can. This Fatui is the opposing nation to Mondstadt and wishes to utilize Stormterror for their own needs, all before killing Stormterror. Obviously, you don't want that. So, after taking Venti into the bar and accidentally being helped by Diluc, the owner, you're forced to answer to Diluc's questions. You tell him your intentions, all to help Mondstadt, and after agreeing to help you, Diluc brings a fourth person on board, Jean. While Jean is still the acting Grandmaster, here she takes on more of a team member role, and really makes this pact between the four of you feel like a genuine D&D campaign. Honestly, it's perfect for someone as nerdy as me. Anyway, you four begin your journey to hunt the Holy Lyre down, healing the teardrops of Tavalin, aka Storm Terror, and fix the lyre in order to calm the unrest among Mondstadt. Now, after taking back the lyre and gaining the correct amount of drops to recharge it, you get Venti to speak to Tavalin, to which it backfires, breaks the lyre, and reveals that Storm Terror is being controlled by a member of the Fatui, who is also led by your sibling from the introduction. You also find out Venti is the wind god Barbados, going under another human name, and intends to help you within his human form. This answers all the foreshadowing from the intro, but unlike something like Persona 5, the intro felt like it tried to explain too much before we got into the main story. Altogether though, the story is alright. After some grueling adventure ranks, the next part of the story has your squad meet up again to go to Storm Terror's ruins, which awesomely is a new entire portion of the map, which works as a semi-dungeon area. The opening to this place is awesome and really gets you ready to fight Tavalin again. After finding out the puzzle, the squad goes in again to fight Tavalin, and with Venti's blessing, all to conglomerate to what is really a mediocre boss fight, at least to start. The flying fight is all around meh, and the main fight, though is pretty cool and theming and music-wise, is easily cheated and a bit repetitive, yet again, at least to start out with. Yet the development of Storm Terror's moves helps to space out its attacks and at least get you some genuine fun. It pulls you into a cool and decently climactic cinematic battle, to which Tavalin teams again with Venti to save everybody. After realizing you're free and returning the lyre to the church and getting introduced to woo, yeah, Barbara! You and Venti get attacked, Venti gets a soul piece, which I can't remember exactly what it's called, taken away from him by a leader of the Fatui, who was also slightly hinted at earlier. Decently nice closing, with a foreshadowing to a mission. You can kinda tell I was trying to abbreviate the story, so I'd recommend playing it yourself. To be honest, this whole story, even though it's spaced out, is really cool to the nerd people like myself. I really felt involved into the characters to a point that made the whole thing feel like a D&D session come to life, long rests and all. In the end, this made me want to keep going, as the mystical ideas of the characters became decently developed enough to make me happy with what I was experiencing. It truly felt like a world after this story, and made me want to keep playing. Genshin Impact is altogether a steal for a free-to-play game. Starting in the rough is hard, and gacha is never fun, but the intricacies in the game battle system and the leveling, all the way to the D&D experience I had with the story, pulls together a nice bundle of appreciation for the anime community. Though the nerds of the whole world may appreciate the game more, I believe everybody could have a great experience with this game, which is why I would like to give this game an overall rating of 8.5 out of 10. Genshin Impact honestly could have improved from being a paid semi-MMO like Destiny, but what it is something I couldn't have hated. And though my first impressions weren't as good, it quickly grew on the weeb that is talking right now. This game, though it's kinda hard to admit, is exactly what I needed during this time. Similar to a lot of people, stress has really been bouncing around because of quarantine, and to me at least, this was the game I needed during this time. It motivated me to a point to say, hey, at the end of the day, I could also play Genshin, and if a game can do that, then it's at least a good game. With that note, go talk to your own emergency food, and have a good day, everybody.